So why are we here? First, to have some fun and get to know each other and build some relationships. How do we go about that? By laughing, sharing, learning, and building relationships with each other. Yes, I did use the word learning. After all, we are the education committee, so we have to build in some learning into this program, okay? All right. Second, well, how will we go about that? Two ingredients are needed. First, we need a worthwhile motivation. Second, we need an opportunity to share our experiences so that the best wisdom can be allowed to surface and to shine forth. Now, how could we not be motivated? We have been given this beautiful revelation. It's brought us new levels of understanding, meaning, and truth to each of us. We have been freely given, so we must freely give. It is not that we are not motivated to share the teachings of the Urantia book because they mean so much to us, but rather we struggle. We struggle to discern the better ways to go about it. Who of us has not tried to share the Urantia book with someone? And often we are met with frustration, disappointment, and even discouragement when our efforts do not bear fruit. And so what happens is that over time, sometimes we quit trying. So our theme for this conference is to ignite the Word again, to rekindle that spirit of wanting to share the teachings with our brothers and sisters. So how will we go about that? So first, I'm going to be your tour guide for the conference. The first series of workshops are going to be, what is the Urantia book? How many times have you tried to answer that question? Number two, who wrote it? How many times have you tried to answer that one? And number three, and perhaps most important, well, why should I even bother to read it? So let's look at some of the questions that you might come across and deal with in your first series of study groups that you'll do this morning. Well, the Urantia book claims to be an epical revelation. Wow. So what do we do with that? Do we hide that for fear that some people might say, oh, revelation, and scare them away? Or do we boldly say, yes, this is a revelation, and it has new truths and insights, and be proud of the fact that we have this revelation? Should we make our response long in hopes that we cover something that might interest somebody? Or should we be very short in our description and then just try to answer their questions about it? Who wrote it? Oh boy. Well, it claims to be authored by celestial beings who live out there in the universe somewhere. Are we going to hide that? Are we going to say, well, it has many authors, in hopes that they'll not be turned off and someday who wrote it won't even matter because the truth will ring through so clearly? Or should we just be upfront and straightforward and sincere in what we say? Does what we say, do the words really impact someone, or is it really who we are that's going to make the greatest impact? Our sincerity, our enthusiasm, in the way that we talk about the book, is that what they will most remember, more so than the words that we might say? And then, why should I read it? Well, you need to ask yourself that question. How has it changed your life? And why not share that? Why not give some personal testimony as to how it has changed your life? Because that's what people want to hear. Why do I want to make this effort? What's it done for you? And so share that with them. Sometimes I think the problem we have is in philosophy, and some of you know I teach philosophy. In philosophy and logic, there's something called the genetic fallacy. And what it means is that most people won't believe something unless they believe in its source. If they don't believe who said it or who wrote it, then they won't believe it. So what have they really done? They are relying on an external authority to tell them what is true. Sometimes I think the process of spiritual evolution and growth is the transfer of that authority for truth from the outside to the inside. All of us have had to make that transfer. All of us have had to learn to trust in that inner guidance to discern what is really true. And sometimes it's obviously can be at odds with external authority, and we're okay with that because that ring of truth, that resonance within us, tells us that what we're reading is true. So let's say that you found a new reader, then what? Well, they need some human contact. They need to get involved. They need to see if this thing is for real. And how will they know that? They'll know that by the fruits of the Spirit. How kind are we? How caring are we? That's what they want to see. And where do we do that? We do it mostly through our study groups. The study groups are truly the backbone of the Urantia movement. We're not a church or religion. We don't have a place to go to on Sunday for group fellowship and for group worship. So mostly we have each other and our contact through our study groups. So many questions about study groups. What makes a study group good? What makes people want to come back and continue to be in a study group? Should the study groups move beyond just the idea of deepening our understanding and meaning of the Urantia book teachings? But should they try to include some prayer, some meditation, some worship, as a way to make up for the fact that we don't have that opportunity except at these conferences and so on, where we can pray and worship together? So lots of questions about study groups. Should you read sequentially? Should you do topical studies? All kinds of questions. And when we do the workshops on study groups, that will give you your opportunity to explore all of those things. What would happen if someone asked you, hey, I belong to this club, this group, maybe it's a book club, whatever it is, and they say, could you come and give us a talk on the Urantia book? Oh boy. You've been waiting for that one, right? But then what do? What should we consider? And let me back up for a moment in terms of study groups, because we have Marilyn Kulicki, who is going to give us a talk on the purpose and value of education, and that will lead into our sessions on study groups. Okay? So now the presentations to groups, and we're going to have Alice Wood, who's going to talk about the best strategies and techniques if you're going to try to give a presentation to a group. So that's what we'll do in this third series of workshops, is explore what works best if you're talking to a group. For example, how much Urantia book jargon should we use? You have to look at your audience, right? Do they have an awareness? Do they understand that jargon? It can be misleading, distorting, confusing if people don't know what it means. And then finally, how do we present the Urantia book to the individual, using the Urantia book or without using the Urantia book? For our fourth series, Marvin Gowron is going to lead us, and he has titled his particular talk, Jesus' Purposes in Personal Ministry and How We Accomplish Them. So there's a lot of ways to look at personal ministry. It might include using the Urantia book or just its teachings. Or it might include just saying hello, just opening the door for someone, just saying thank you. It might include just listening to them and let them unburden their soul. As Jesus passed by in his ministry, the book tells us, Jesus did much or most of his ministry by what? Listening. So we have to learn to put ourselves and our own egos aside and focus on that other individual and make them our total focus. What is it that they need and not what we might think we need? If you're not going to talk with them about the Urantia book, what do you want them to hear? What is the key spiritual messages of the Urantia book? What is the gospel? What is it that they most need to hear? Again, can just a smile be a way of showing love for people? Again, what becomes most important? You know, you've all heard that saying. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And so does that become what's most important, really? Is it that personal contact? Is it the flavor of love that exudes from us? Is that what is going to be most attractive to them? So these are questions that you can get into in that series of workshops. In addition to the 4 series of workshops, we're going to do some additional presentations. Tonight, for example, there's going to be a presentation on the new teacher education program. And Elizabeth Callahan, the executive director of Urantia University Institute, which has created this program, is going to talk to us about it, what it is, and how you get involved and answer all of your questions about it and so on. You know, when the Urantia organizations were first formed in the 1950s, they had an education committee, and it created a program for training teachers and leaders. And it went for a while, but then it sort of became dormant. And what's interesting to me is who chaired it. You've heard of this guy named Dr. Sadler, right? Head of the Human Contact Commission. Well, he could have had the presidency of either organization. He could have had whatever position he wanted. But what did he choose? He chose to be the chair of the Education Committee. And he chose to write many of the materials for the education program to train teachers and leaders. Now, I can only speculate, but that suggests to me that he saw the training of teachers and leaders as incredibly important, that he himself was going to make sure that it got initiated and started. Meanwhile, it sort of faded away, and we hadn't been able to revive it, get it going again. And now it has. The Urantia University Institute has now created a program. So that will give you an opportunity to hear all about it. And we have several students here who recently graduated from that program, so you can talk to them about their experience if you're interested in the program. Then on Saturday morning, we'll also have a session where all of the workshop leaders get 2 minutes, 2 minutes only. I have the shepherd hook to drag you on, okay? To give only 1 or 2 key ideas that came out of the workshop that they feel is most important, okay? So we'll hit just the cream of the top, off the top, and try to gather together the gems of wisdom that come from you and your experience and your sharing in these workshops. And then on Saturday morning, we'll conclude with a communion and worship service. But before that, Gard Jameson will present how Jesus taught. And Gard will bring us home with the master teacher himself. And how did he become such a successful teacher and reach so many people, both individuals and groups. So that's the tour. Are you ready to jump aboard? All right, okay. I think it'll be fun. And the point is that you need to participate. We need your wisdom. We need your experience for the best ideas to surface. So please participate, join in, and share whatever you can when you're in these workshops together. So I titled my talk, The Art of Teaching, and I use the word art to suggest that teaching can be a creative process and not just the formalized passing on of knowledge, facts, and information, which it often ends up being. But what does it mean to be creative? It means to express something in a way that has never been done before. Let's take music, for example. So if you're singing the lyrics that someone else has written, or you're playing the music of someone else's musical notation, that's not necessarily creative because you're doing what someone else has already created. But if you modify as you're playing, if you change the lyrics some, then you're engaging in a creative process, right? If you write a whole new song with original lyrics or a new piece of music with original musical notation, that's creative. It's the idea of doing something that has not been done before, at least as far as you know, okay? How about cooking? If you follow that recipe exactly, you're just sort of doing what someone else has created, right? But if, as you're cooking, you kind of throw in a dash of this and a dash of that, you kind of change up, and then so you're being creative in the process, okay? Perhaps you've heard the adage, those who can't do, teach. It's a very pejorative way of looking at the idea of teaching, but there's some truth in it. For example, how many of you had professors in college that knew the subject well, but were clueless about how to try to get it across to you in a very clear or effective way? Hands up? Yeah, that's a pretty common experience there, okay? This suggests that there is a difference between knowing something and being able to teach it. I believe this difference is this element of creativity in teaching. So I'm going to suggest that we look at the adage in a different way. Those who can't teach, do. This version implies that, oh my gosh, there's a skill, a talent, and perhaps even an art in teaching. Why is that distinction important? It's important because it means we can all learn how to become better and more creative teachers. And that is what we are here and trying to help each other with at this conference. How can each of us become a better teacher, sharer, ambassador of this revelation? We can do it by sharing our wisdom of what works the best and helping each other hone our skills of teaching and sharing. How many of you do not see yourselves as a very creative person? Don't be shy. Raise your hands. Okay. Well, I'm here to tell you that we're all creative. Think of it this way. You are given a unique personality, right? One that will never be duplicated in all eternity. So you are unique. And you are given a fragment of God to indwell you and to guide you. So how do we become creative throughout life? Well, the analogy I chose to use is based on my last name, Painter. So I'm going to use painting and being an artist as my analogy here for being creative. Now you can imagine with the last name Painter, all the family name jokes, right? Are you an artist? Well, yeah, I've been a painter all my life. If I want to start a business of painting, you have any experience? Of course, I've been a painter all my life, right? But the truth is, I'm an awful artist. I still draw stick figures. My artistic skills have been arrested probably at about a first grade level. So as I mentioned, I teach philosophy, so sometimes I make drawings on the whiteboard, and the students roll their eyes and kind of cringe. So one time we were discussing, it came up, and I wanted to use the story in the Urantia book of the caveman and the saber-toothed tiger, because we were talking about how we humans tend to judge each other and people's situations without really knowing much detail about it. So I drew the stick figure of the caveman, and I said, of course, you have to use your imaginations about the spear and the ferocious look, because I don't know how to draw that. And then I drew the stick figures of the wife and the daughter on the side. And then the saber-toothed tiger. I tried to make big teeth, but I kept asking them, so you know what that is? And they're like, no, you know. And they're guessing various animals. No, 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 no. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have to give them a hint, right? So I drew stripes on it. I just assumed that all tigers had stripes. And one of the students raised his hand, Mr. Painter, saber-toothed tigers don't have stripes. Okay. So another embarrassing moment as a teacher, okay? All right. And by the way, that is a wonderful lesson. I find myself referring to it in my life more and more. When I can't understand somebody, when I'm struggling, I stop and say, what's their motivation? Why are they acting in the way that they are? Why are they saying what they're saying? And it doesn't necessarily make me like what they're saying or what they're doing, but it does make me understand and have compassion. And as the book tells us, that compassion can eventually even learn to love that person. So each of us, imagine that as you start out life, you get a canvas. And on this canvas, you're going to be and paint a self-portrait throughout your life. You have a palette of colors. We'll say the 7 colors of the rainbow, okay? Every decision that you make is a brushstroke on that canvas. As you dab the paintbrush into the palette of colors, making that decision, sometimes it's a bright color, and we'll call that a pure and good decision. Sometimes you kind of mix it with the other colors, and it's kind of, it's not bad, but it's not, it's not really as good as it could be. And then sometimes we just mix those awful looking colors and we make some bad decisions along the way. But you know what's really neat about this idea of making this self-portrait is that we can redo it at any time. You can paint over your previous mistakes. And if you're like me, you've had to do that many, many times. And over the course of time, all that paint builds up and it actually adds a thickness and a texture to it. And that thickness and texture just reflects all of the wisdom that you've derived from mistakes and the things that you've learned to do and are now learning to do better. One of the frustrations of being a self-taught artist, painting your own self-portrait, is you feel alone. Don't you wish you had an art teacher who could give you some guidance? Absolutely. And we do. Within us is the greatest art teacher you can imagine. A fragment of God. We call it the thought adjuster, the mystery monitor. First of all, this particular art teacher knows us better than any other human could ever know us. And they love us unconditionally. Hard to find in humans. And they're waiting patiently for us to ask for some guidance. But will we even discover that this divine art teacher lies within us? Most people probably don't in their life. And if we do discover it, we'll be able to overcome our pride to ask for help. So the goal and the purpose is, why make it harder than it has to be? Why not ask that art teacher for some help? How do you do that? Well, you would have to start communicating with your art teacher, wouldn't you? Start asking questions. Start creating a dialogue. Start building a personal relationship with them. And the same is true with our divine minister within. You have to take some time each day to talk with them, to build that relationship, to seek that guidance, to say that you want that guidance. There's no magic to it necessarily. It's just really like building any personal relationship with anyone. You have to take the time to begin to do it and to continue it in order to build that relationship with them. So what do you want your final portrait to look like? Imagine on the mansion worlds, or perhaps even in paradise, there's the supreme hall of portraits. And your portrait you want to hang there. But what do you want it to look like? Will your face reflect peace, kindness, caring about others, love? Or will it reflect material success, status, arrogance, self-interest? You get to make that choice. You get to make that choice of what your final portrait is going to look like. Day by day, decision by decision, you are creating your portrait. But why not co-create it with your inner spirit, with your inner art teacher? The final decisions are yours, but why not accept some guidance from your inner art teacher? The same process applies to teaching. Rather than doing it in the same way as always, you have a master teacher within you to give you advice. Rather than trying to rack your brain to determine what to say about the book, for example, pause and ask your inner spirit what the other person needs to hear. You don't have to figure it out all by yourself. You can ask for some guidance. Allow this co-creative process to be your guide. Jesus taught by listening, discoursing, using parables, appealing to a person's soul, and many other techniques. Build your personal relationship with God, and your reward is a more creative solution to whatever you are doing. Bring your inner spirit with you into the discussion. Let your inner spirit help guide you and paint the most beautiful portrait that you can't even imagine at this moment. And let that inner spirit be your master teacher, guiding you in everything that you do in your attempts to spread and share this revelation with others. So what is my point about the art of teaching? I could have just said, 1, who you become is based on your decisions. Number 2, you can communicate with your inner spirit to help you make better decisions. And number 3, to communicate with your inner spirit, you need to build a personal relationship by spending time with your inner spirit each day. Now that's nice, and you'll remember it now for a while, but a month from now, What are you going to remember? Are you going to try to recall those 3 points? Or is the image of you as an artist painting your self-portrait going to be what sticks with you? I want to share a piece of music that I fell in love with because I believe it really reflects what we're here to do and what we're trying to do. It reflects our attempts to make this world a better place, and at the same time asks us to be thankful.
Some days we forget to look around us. Some days we can't see the joy that surrounds us. So caught up inside ourselves, take when we should give. So for tonight we pray for what we know can be, and on this day we hope for what we still can't see. It's up to us to be the change, and even though we all can still do more, there's so much to be thankful for. Look beyond ourselves, there's so much sorrow. It's way too late to say I'll cry tomorrow. Each of us must find our truth. We're so long overdue. So for tonight we pray for what we know can be, and every day we hope for what we still can't see. It's up to us to be the change, and even though we all can still do more, there's so much to be thankful for. Even with our differences, there is a place we're all connected. Each of us can find each other's light. much to be thankful for.
So let's go in peace. Let's share our love and our wisdom together, and let's have a great conference. Thank you.